The U.S. Supreme Court rules in favor of former President Donald Trump in his appeal of a Colorado ballot disqualification. That applies to Colorado. In all likelihood, it will apply to other states as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program. A big week ahead of us. We got Super Tuesday today and a lot of things going on, but let's address the top. 9-0. Supreme Court rules in favor of President Trump that the Colorado system of justice in general is completely out of their damn minds.
Yeah.
Fellas, it's not a surprise to any of you, is it?
Well, I'll say not in the least, in the sense that, you know, this was, everyone knew, an absolute nut job approach by activists to try and seize control of our elections. The best way for the left to save democracy is by deciding who they allow on the ballot. That was basically what they were going with here. And thank God we had the Supreme Court do the right thing unanimously. And that's really interesting, especially if you look at kind of like the blowback that has come from the left, where you have folks like Keith Olbermann who are like, dissolve the Supreme Court completely.
Lunatic.
And as absurd as that sounds, the thing is, this is kind of where the left has been going. When they're pushing court packing, when they have groups like Fix the Court, their director is now working for the Biden campaign. So this is not like some fringe movement to try and pack the court and try to take over the only thing stopping the left from total control. This is where they are writ large. So that's why they are lashing out.
Americans for Prosperity has done it again. You're going to love this. Know how Biden's been running around the country bragging about Bidenomics? And the media's doing stories on how the president has embraced the term? Well, guess what? Americans for Prosperity just bought the Bidenomics.com domain name. I can't believe the White House didn't get this first. This would be like Pepsi buying Coca-Cola.com. It's hilarious. Bidenomics.com sets the record straight on the failures of Joe Biden's economy, his horrible record on cost of living, wages, debt, deficits, energy, and more. I've been to the site. I can tell you, it's not what Joe Biden wants Americans to see. AFP takes Biden's own words and compares them to the reality of everyday Americans. It's packed with facts and stories that prove Bidenomics is a costly failure. Americans for Prosperity deserves a lot of credit for this coup. Visit Bidenomics.com soon, the website Joe Biden doesn't want you to see. Yeah, it is proof that it is a lawless ideology.
Yeah.
Obviously, because, like, in what world do Sotomayor and Justice Thomas agree, and the reaction from the left is invalidate the United States Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't that be an indication that maybe your position has no merit?
Yeah, right. The problem with the left is they have a false sense of security. They get their way in almost every single aspect of American culture on a routine basis.
Yep.
And when somebody says, oh, you can't have it, they're like a toddler that doesn't get their pass.
I like that.
They cry and they cry and they whine and they whine and they whine. And you know what? America's not going to give you everything you want every single day of the week.
As long as we have our Supreme Court. And that's why they are specifically targeting and trying to undermine the Supreme Court. You see it from journalists, you see it from these left-wing dark money groups. They have their targets fixed on the Supreme Court, and it's specifically because of instances like this. The only thing preserving our American way of life right now, when Democrats have total control, where you've seen the Biden administration's lawlessness, the only thing that can stop them right now is the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And we appreciate you guys joining in. Josh Holmes, Comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, left to right across the radio dial as we join you here on a Tuesday. I will say the thing was pretty short and sweet. I think an awful lot of us right from the very beginning predicted 9-0 on this because the law in and of itself is not ever in question. This was a outcome-based filing from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. What they did in 9-0, which, by the way, in this political environment,
it's incredible.
You get 9-0 on something, like, it just is what it is, right? It's like, thanks for playing, fellas.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like, why don't you go back to your greasy confines of the swamp that you live in? But it was 13 pages, which for a Supreme Court decision, that's pretty brief.
Yeah.
It just is basically like, take your shot, pin it up against the backboard, and we're going to go in a different direction. The reason that this makes sense beyond Colorado is that there's a number of other states, Maine, Illinois, and others, that have tried to follow on here and try to pretend as though an underlying crime that has never been charged was a prerequisite to keep President Trump off the ballot. That, obviously, is not something that is going to be upheld in the Supreme Court, and it's just summarily rejected. And I think, at a time where so much, way more than ever could have imagined, the judicial system is playing a role in our political environment. Nice to see, right, fellas?
Yeah, and you know something, Duncan has had a really good take on this in the last couple of days.
Oh, he's buttering our friend's bread.
Well, it happens to be true. What you've been saying, Michael, about how the left puts this lawfare on a pedestal is like this is their savior to protect them from Trump.
Yeah, I mean, they've been... I don't know. I feel like left-wing media, mainstream media, has primed the pump on this for Democrats since 2017. We were on Will Kane's show this morning, and I said it on there. But from the early days of the Trump administration, they've been told Robert Mueller is going to save them, Michael Avenatti is going to save them, Adam Schiff is going to save them, and so now they believe like these prosecutors are their way they're going to get Trump. And, I think like maybe they're coming to the final stages of grief on this. I don't know. But no one's coming to save you.
Right.
And hopefully they're coming to terms with that. And they've got this octogenarian Joe Biden at the top of the ticket who half of them don't want to be the nominee. And they're like, ooh, I don't know. One other thing I would say, though, is like this sword can cut both ways. And I know we're all cheering right now for a 9-0 verdict of the United States Supreme Court, but there's also this case of presidential immunity that Donald Trump is using partially as a delaying tactic here for these other trials, and that could come down the opposite way. Like,
well, it's look, I have no idea, and I can't begin to sort of compound upon like where ultimately that one is settled. There are legal issues there. That we've had people like Andrew McCarthy on the show who have suggested that this is not much of a case from President Trump's point of view, and he expects a defeat. But I think, like, to the point that Smug has made from the beginning of the work that conservatives have done on the Supreme Court, you have a Supreme Court with some integrity.
Yeah.
Right? You've got a Supreme Court that follows law, case law, constitutional law. Like, all of these things, like, in and of itself, isn't it nice to have at least one institution in this country that is following the duty that it is prescribed to accomplish, right?
It's the last line in the sand.
Yeah.
And I think it's incumbent upon conservatives, Americans, to recognize the significance and importance of the Supreme Court, especially at a time like now where Democrats in a quest for total power are willing to destroy any institution, anything that stops them from having total control.
It is nice, though, right? Because everything else is like outcome-based, right? And the justification can be backfilled for whatever political ploy the left wants to do. But the Supreme Court is like the only place in America where it's like, no, see, the rules are pretty clear.
Yeah.
And that drives them crazy. Earlier to Ashbrook's points, like that's when they become toddlers throwing a tantrum.
So one interesting little caveat before we move on is that the court basically held that in order for the 14th Amendment to apply to this particular case, there would need to be some legislative authority in that regard, that Congress would have to act with laws that ultimately they could follow that would deal with ballot disqualification or not. An interesting part for me is that Amy Coney Barrett also wrote a concurrence that she thinks that the court was a bit too broad in its decision, and that she would have only said that Colorado lacked the power to boot Trump, not that Congress could define the qualifications. Myself, I actually agree with it. Because, look, if you're a conservative, you're an OG conservative.
Yep.
Not like a conservative that just showed up in the last 5 years and you're like, these things.
Although, welcome to the party. We love you too.
Yeah, well, we love you too. But, like, what conservatives have fought for decades is ensuring that there is not a federal prescribed definition of who qualifies for ballots, how you can get on, how elections are assembled, this, that, and the other. If you recall, like all of the outrage over the Georgia voting law, for example, which turned out to be complete fraud of an argument. That was the Jim Crow, Jim Eagle, President Biden deal against Governor Kemp, in which they had record turnout afterwards.
Oh, would you look at that?
Weird, right? But their view, the left's view, by and large, has been that the federal government ought to control every single one of these elections, soup to nuts. They ought to be able to entirely prescribe who qualifies for ballots, who doesn't. States don't basically have a role in prescribing what their own elections ought to look like. As a conservative, that bothers me. And we have fought for decades upon decades to ensure that states ultimately have the authority to have their own election laws, right? If they want voter ID, they get voter ID. Things like that.
And why does the left want the federal government to control elections, pray tell? All you need to do is look at who lives in Washington, D.C., who lives in Northern Virginia, and who lives in southwestern Maryland. They are all Democrats. Look at the turnout for the Republican primary in D.C. over the weekend. Only 2,000 people out of the 750,000 people who live in D.C. turned out to vote. The federal government is controlled by people who lean to the left and vote Democrat. That's why Democrats want the federal government to control your elections.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think her concurrence sort of sees around the corner here a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a time, it may not be 5 years, it may not be 10 years, maybe 15 years from now, but there will come a time when there is a case presented in front of the Supreme Court that will deal with federal preemption of very significant state laws when it deals with, like, voter ID, for example. What she's done is preserved an argument there that states very well have an argument to be made here in terms of determining how and when people vote. And I think that's important. Important.
No,
that's a little bit more in the weeds than probably most of you need to know, but, like, that is what it is.
One thing the media is great at is distracting you away from the things you should actually be focused on. While the media was debating Taylor Swift, China, Russia, Brazil, India, and South Africa, basically half the world's population, created BRICS, which is a massive economic alliance poised to replace the dollar with their own currency. The consequences of this could be dire, and with 401k accounts losing 25% of their value the past 2-3 years, why would you continue to risk your personal savings? Don't gamble with your financial future. Invest in the one thing that's been proven stable for centuries. Gold, from the company I trust, Allegiance Gold. They've earned the highest trust ratings in the precious metals industry, and their relationships are based on integrity, expertise, and impeccable service. Go to protectwithruthless.com today or call 855-510-GOLD. Right now, get up to $5,000 free silver with a qualifying purchase. Don't get fooled by inflated stock values or the promise that the economy is stable. Protect your financial future today. protectwithruthless.com. That's protectwithruthless.com or call 855-510-GOLD.
We got a big show coming up for you today. We've got some guests. We got MK Hammer.
Yeah, crowd favorite.
She's coming back on, and she's coming on with a good friend of hers in Meghan McCain. And we're going to talk about a whole range of issues. Like it's a good long interview. Not a ton of politics, to be honest. I like politics as it intersects with life.
And from what I've been told, Meghan McCain basically reveals how awful the folks on The View were.
Yeah, our first third of the interview, at least, is just about how terrible those people are.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is worth sticking around for. We've got a big show coming up Thursday.
Yes.
For the State of the Union.
That's right.
If you recall, our first adventure into YouTube was the State of the Union. That's when we had the tiny TV.
The tiny TV, and we were crushing McDonald's.
Yeah.
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 The OG program.
So we're gonna give that another shot in a different deal. Spaghettis, do we feel good about how that's going to look for people? We feel good about
gonna
it.
be terrific.
Yeah, we're getting the thumbs up.
It's gonna be entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be way more entertaining than what you're getting over on like C-SPAN and CNN or MSNBC. But like, this is the place you want to be
Yeah.
for the State of the Union.
Come watch the State of the Union with the
Yeah.
fellas.
You're allowed to make jokes. You're allowed to be irreverent.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think maybe we might, read some stuff out of the chat, get a little
A great
a
idea.
little crowd interaction. We want to be fun.
It's gonna be a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to cover Super Tuesday 2 today, and then we're also going to play a game.
Yeah.
Hard Pivot. We're going to bring Hard Pivot back.
Crowd fave.
We're going to switch a bunch of stuff, but Hard Pivot's coming back.
So Holmes, can I actually interject with one other topic we haven't addressed here in the opening that I'd like to address?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Last week we did Dana Bash's show on CNN,
Oh yeah.
and boy oh boy,
Boy, oh boy.
first of all, thank you to her. I think they actually did a fantastic.
Well, we've called this for a long time on the program. The people like Dana, who we've known for a long time, but she's a news person.
Yeah.
Like, she does news stuff. Mm-hmm. And we've known her for a long time, and she thought we had something to add in a particular moment in time and wanted to do that in a fun, light way, different than what CNN does. And she had us on, and I think that was terrific.
It was terrific. What came out of it, though, is really the thing I want to address, and that is we are running a podcast right now with a man, a hero,
Yes.
comfortably smug.
Yes.
The reaction to him being on CNN, I think, was one of the greatest historical markers in the history of the program. The reaction that it got on the internet, Mediaite put up this story, liberals fume over CNN platforming, quote, vicious far-right internet troll in sunglasses.
There's some accuracy.
And I just wanted to take a moment. I didn't want to, we're busy. We're doing so much stuff on this show, and I think we have to take a moment to appreciate that. And Smug, you're a hero for having to brave the internet mob.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing moment. I was getting text messages where they were like, wow, like Taylor Lorenz and like all these like left-wing journalists are mad that you're on TV. And I remember it was McDaniel who texted me this. And I replied, I was like, I'm literally having tacos for lunch, having a terrific day.
Yeah.
And all these people's day is ruined.
It's
Because
like you always
I was
say.
allowed on TV.
It's like what you always say. Stay mad in the face of my success.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they were like, I mean, that's what boggles me is like, I was having a great day. I'm chilling, having a tacos for lunch.
And you ruined all their days.
And all of them are just like angry
And
having a horrible day.
And that's really why I wanted to bring this up, is like, that's power. That's real power.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing, like, my only trepidation about all of this was like, I hope Dana doesn't have a bad deal out of this, because she like ran the risk of putting us on the air to give some conversation, and like,
And that shouldn't get overlooked, because that
takes some bravery.
it's a brave thing at CNN.
She knew
Yeah.
what she was getting into. She knew who we were, but like immediately thereafter, they tried to make her regret it. Mm-hmm. They tried.
Yeah,
hard.
Libs tried to reply to her and being like, "How dare you platform these far right people?"
And therein lies the game, right? And Ashbrook knows this better than anybody. But like, the reason why cable news sucks so much is that when people like her try to have people like us on, there's this whole chorus of people online that try to gatekeep the media as an institution.
Right.
And it's the reason why they wonder why they don't understand half of America.
Yep.
And the reason why is that like Smug comes on and it's offense of the highest accord.
Listen, man, if this is what the libs are doing publicly, imagine what they do behind the scenes.
Right.
To try to prevent anybody with a different point of view from having any chance to say, oh, well, half of America sees things differently.
Yep.
They're like, no, you don't understand.
Not
you didn't
on
go
our
to
channel.
Brown.
Not on our channel.
You weren't at Wellesley.
Yeah.
You know,
Suddenly-
like you're not allowed to say that on cable TV. And it's like, for crying out loud, like, how about we just talk about things?
People were texting me like tweets where they were calling us alt-right. We're alt-right people.
I know, it's just so
Amazing.
funny.
We're alt-right.
But
dangerous.
but I also did love the fact that, like, in that current iteration of attack, that somehow they just sort of like hand waved through some of us and then just focused directly on Smug.
Well, and that's why I thought it deserved some accolades. The guy took the slings and the arrows on the internet for all of us, and I appreciate that. I didn't want to derail the rest of the thing.
And also, it was awesome to see the millions of replies I was being sent of they just went after any of the libs who were mad about this, which made the libs even angrier.
Right.
It's terrific. It was a beautiful thing.
Minions are the best. Our audience, we have the best audience.
We really do. We really do. We appreciate everybody for entertaining us on that. I mean, we will do some outside the box things. That was one of them. But I honest to God mean this. Thanks to Dan for doing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's not an inconsiderable risk, knowing who we are,
right,
and knowing who our audience typically is. And Dana is like one of those people who thinks that you ought to get a different point of view,
right,
but also knew that we were going to come on and be respectful, and we were. I mean, we didn't like tip over a table and create a problem. Like we gave some sincere analysis that we thought was real, and nothing I thought was out of bounds.
No. Right. Smug thought about it when she said pack the court. He thought he was going to flip that table over.
Well, you got correct. I mean, Republicans have not packed the court, and the left just wants to.
That's right.
But she listened to your point of view.
The thing.
This is the thing that's different about Dana than a lot of these other people in the media, is that she wants both sides.
Yeah.
She knows that this country is split evenly among people who are Republicans and people who are Democrats, and each side has their own points. And what you're trying to do on the news is make sure that you hear both of them, so you understand what the information.
It's what we argue about every day here on the show.
Yeah.
And they gave us our time.
Yeah, which is all you can ask for. I appreciate you bringing that up, old man. All right, let's talk a little bit about Super Tuesday. If you're in one of 15 states across this great union, hopefully you're voting. There's a Republican primary that is entering its final stage, obviously. All has been decided but today in a lot of ways. I think most people think that this thing is going to be decided by tomorrow morning. And, the caveat to that, you had Nikki Haley win D.C. over the weekend, which was remarkably low, as you've suggested, 2,000 some odd votes, but a win is a win. And then all of a sudden we enter into this broader segment of the electorate. It's not like the featured states that we're dealing with. It's like the broader electorate, which if you look at any polls, it would suggest that primary's probably been decided already. Now, there could be some surprises, but I think for the most part, Super Tuesday looks like it kind of is what it's going to be, right?
Yeah, look, we had North Dakota last night. That's another winner-take-all state. And if President Trump wins every single delegate on the table today, he still will be a little bit shy of the 1,215 he needs to actually clinch the nomination. He's probably going to get it in the month of March.
Yeah, I read somewhere it was probably by the third week of March where he could likely get to the point where they've clinched it all together. Meaning over half of the entirety of the Republican delegates that are up for competition.
2,429 delegates up for grabs.
Look at this guy.
You need half.
He's got the math.
Look at that. He's got math.
You need over half. And while he may not be able, just mathematically, he may not be able to get there tonight, he's going to put a marker down that shows he won't be beaten.
Yeah. In all likelihood, this is going to happen sooner rather than later. From the Trump campaign perspective, that's a best case scenario. I think it's certainly entering this primary, one that was real question about, right? Whether or not you could just run the table at the beginning and get to a point where you're the consensus nominee by spring. And that seems to be what he's done, right, Smug?
Yeah, I mean, again, they seem to be right on track with what the Trump campaign wanted to accomplish here. And like Ashbrook said, this is going to be settled by March. I think it's almost become like a foregone conclusion. Trump's going to hit the number. He's going to clinch the nomination. And it seemed for a while there it'd be a much more wide open race, much more interesting. But at the end of the day, you had such a significant portion of the Republican primary voter base who was with Trump, stuck with Trump. We're seeing the numbers. And it feels like to me, and I think to a lot of voters they'd agree, this is a process that's wrapping up.
Yeah, it is. And what it's done more than anything is set the general election into overdrive here early. And this week, amongst all weeks, feels like it's the kickoff to the general election, because you not only have Super Tuesday, which will near Trump with the majority delegate lead, but you also have the State of the Union.
Yep.
And so I think the vast majority of American voters are going to put this in a category of, here are the two.
Yep.
Let's make some decisions. And we've got, the next 7 months, essentially, to make that call. And look, there's a lot of water that needs to be. I mean, when you have a president that every day seems like a diminishing day in terms of your acuity and everything else, I think that's got to be something to take into account. But also, we've got a whole bunch of legal stuff ahead of us, a whole bunch of other stuff ahead of us, a lot of decision making to be done, right?
I think so. It'll be interesting here over the course of the week. The thing about the State of the Union is no one really hides the ball. I think it's one of the most interesting things in our politics for that reason, from a communications standpoint, is you will very clearly hear from Democrats before the address what Joe Biden's trying to accomplish out of it, right? Like that's what they do. They're going to be like, oh, well, this is going to be a reset. Donald Trump is going to point out the contradictions between him and the assumed Republican nominee, Donald Trump. He's going to refocus things and yada, yada, yada. He's going to move beyond his age and senility,
right?
And sort of recast the accomplishments of his administration vis-a-vis Donald Trump and the chaos of those years. I'm like, I can already write what every producer of every TV show is going to be saying every, on Wednesday night. Right. But it's a tough hill to climb for Joe Biden. It just frankly is.
It is a tough hill to climb, and when he gets to the top, his chief contrast will not necessarily be with Donald Trump. It will be with the youngest woman in the United States Senate, and that's Katie Britt, who is responding to Joe Biden. So you will have a dichotomy between the oldest guy who's ever been in the White House and the youngest woman who's ever been in the Senate. And the two of them will present a divergent views for America, and I have a feeling that everybody's going to want Katie Britt's view of the world as opposed to Joe Biden's.
There's no question about that. It creates arrogance for the former president in contrast to the current president, but also in the backdrop of a whole bunch of polling that's come out that shows that Donald Trump has got a lead here. It's not only a national lead, it's a state-by-state lead. And if you look at it, it's sort of undeniable in an awful lot of ways. I mean, if you can do it 2 ways, or you can do it a 5-way ballot. He's got to lead either way.
Yeah.
And he's got to lead in the states that matter either way.
Right.
So they're digging out from underneath the hole. Like, as we've said in the Variety program for months and months and months, the Democratic coalition is yet to coalesce in the way that they need to. And our cynical view of that is it will at some point. Question is, in what intensity? And then in what intensity does the Republican coalition coalesce around Trump? Like, I think it's already coalesced in terms of primary voters, for sure. But what does it do in terms of a majority-making Republican electorate? Like, do we have those center-right, economically conservative Republicans on board? Not yet, I would argue. But they could be. Given this president's record, they very well could be. On the Democratic side, do you have those young voters and those people of color who are now, showing 25, 28% African-American support for Trump, 35, 40, 45% support in the Hispanic community? I think the Hispanic vote is much more likely to hold or be something similar to that than the African-American support, which I think will come down considerably when you get from polling to actual vote counts. But either way, this is going to be a tight race, isn't it, Smug?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think the biggest problem that Joe Biden faces is now he's got a record. So Americans can now very easily compare, unlike they could in 2020, what 4 years under Joe Biden would look like as compared to what 4 years under President Trump looked like. And it's a no-brainer. The country has not gotten into a better place as a result of 4 years of Joe Biden. There are numerous examples, whether it's the border, the economy, crime, you name it, topics that matter the most to voters where there could not be a clear comparison between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And so I think that will dent turnout, as early as we are. It's only March. I think it's still going to hurt the turnout that Joe Biden has because they can't run on a record. They're going to have to run on playing the old hits of like, Trump's going to destroy democracy. It's racism. This is authoritarianism. That's all they can run on is trying to scare folks. But I think it's become apparent. They've seen what 4 years of Joe Biden is like, and they want to go back to having a country that's prosperous, that's safe. And the way that they do that is to vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden.
It's undoubtedly true, though, that the greatest mobilizing force for Democrats has been Donald Trump. I mean, that's...
Well, it's the only way to get these factions together.
It really.
The question is whether they have intensity to actually get out and vote at the point
and so
where
that's,
they did in 2020.
That's what I want to get to next, because last week we did this whole segment on the outcome in Michigan. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about Democratic enthusiasm writ large as it pertains to turnout. I was talking more about that uncommitted vote as a percentage of that. And it was like 13 and it was large and all those sorts of things. But I think I owe you a little bit of an apology.
No, that's very kind. Introspective and thoughtful from the old man.
I think in the subsequent week, what you addressed more is the general malaise, the Jimmy Carter malaise, the Democratic Party right now. It's 100% true from that New York Times Siena poll here. Only 23% of Democratic primary voters said they were enthusiastic about Mr. Biden.
Think about that.
Wow.
23%. I mean, that's now, just look, I know like negative mobilization against Donald Trump for Democrats has been a lot of their success from 18 to 20 to 2022. And that's what they're banking on in 2024. But like 23%,
right?
It ain't enough.
It ain't enough.
It ain't enough.
It's not.
It ain't enough. Now we're gonna see how this whole thing plays out. But if you're in Donald Trump camp, if you were there a year ago and you said these were your hand of cards, you would have taken it in a New York minute.
Yep.
Right.
This does not look better than it could have possibly looked under any other circumstances. So we are to that. With that, we're going to come back with a game after these messages. All right, fellas, we're going to play Hard Pivot.
Yes.
Which
it's becoming a new crowd favorite.
It really is.
It is.
For good reason.
Well, it's become look, it's fantastic. If you recall, what this is about is people being served a message that they're supposed to deliver as a politician. And this is a macro indictment on our politics overall. These are what you're going to say, and then they're going to be asked a question that they're supposed to respond to, but they have to get that message in. And then to add to that, we're going to have an additional piece that you can come in and plug.
Yeah, bonus point.
For a bonus point. And then you guys will be Johnny. So who's doing what?
So I'm the journo. I'm asking you guys each a question. Michael Duncan is the staffer and the judge. So he will judge how well you've done in your answers. And Michael Duncan has the additional piece that you're supposed to wedge into the conversation. Michael,
for our listeners, you may recall when we played this, I think 2 weeks ago, my bonus point plug was I was a lib.
You're very proud of this.
I am. But my bonus plug was I had to plug a podcast.
And you made it up your own.
Pronouns and land acknowledgement. Anyway, so those are right here. But first, let me read your backgrounds.
Okay.
And your pivots. Okay.
Do I get the paper to look at?
You get the bonus point paper to look at.
So we're going to start with Smug.
Okay, so Smug is first here. Smug, you're a liberal senator from the Northeast.
Okay.
Your pivot is why the Supreme Court ruling on the Colorado case is a threat to democracy.
Okay.
It should be easy for you. Hold on, let me read his bonus, or let me give him his bonus point.
Okay, there's paper being exchanged. He's got his bonus point that he's now reviewing.
And this is a secret bonus point.
Excellent.
Okay, so Smug, you remember what you're supposed to pivot to.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm the journo. Smug, among your many proposals for our transition to green energy is requiring all passenger vehicles in the United States to have 3 wheels instead of 4. Can you describe what practical impact this will have on reducing greenhouse gas emissions?
Absolutely. So I talk about this extensively on my podcast. It's called Fossil Fuel Fatwa, Winning the War on Oil, where essentially what we have in this country is backwards billionaires who are trying to take over by pushing oil and stopping progress. We could have blocked the sun by now. We could have cut CO2 emissions in half. And I think a prime example of their influence is look what just happened in the Supreme Court, where it's now a rogue court. They're allowing Trump to run on the ballot. If you let him on the ballot, democracy is over tonight. It's that simple. It's that easy. And so that's why I think voters need to be paying attention to this.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Smug.
It's succinct, too. I really like that.
So good.
I like that. I mean, that was well done.
Yeah,
Smug.
that
thank
was
you. I
well
tried.
done.
I love how he came right off the top of the plug.
Yeah, he really did. It just like washed ashore any concerns about getting it in.
Holmes, you are conservative from a very red district.
Oh, okay.
So you're a House member.
Yeah,
Which I
okay.
know might bother you.
Well, that in and of itself is going to take some work. Yeah.
Your pivot is reducing government dependency by imposing work requirements on welfare recipients.
Okay.
And here is your bonus point.
Okay. Okay.
You got your pivot? You're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Let's hear the question.
Journo?
Okay, Congressman. With a humanitarian disaster unfolding in Gaza, do you support the Biden administration's airdrops of food and water to the civilian population?
Oh, hell no. No, listen, I think for starters, what you're talking about is a terrorist regime. Yeah. You're either with us or you're against us, and everybody's known that from the very beginning. But the biggest problem is when you're providing this kind of aid, what you're telling people is, bomb us for free. Bomb us for free, which is what we've been doing in this country. And I can tell you from my book, Star-Spangled Bootstraps, Welfare Woes to Working Wonders, we have done this for years. Inner cities across this country have been bombing ourselves, bombing indiscriminately by handouts, not handouts, and ensuring that the American people do not work. They do not have the welfare to work. That what they do have is a big check from the federal government for bombing our communities.
What was the name of that book? Star-Spangled Bootstraps?
Star-Spangled Bootstraps, Welfare Woes to Working Wonders.
I feel like you channeled your inner Zell Miller there for a minute.
Star-Spangled Bootstraps.
Wow.
That is funny.
This is a tough one to judge, though.
Bombing our communities.
So I guess what I have to judge is which I think would have performed best, and like on sheer pageantry, Holmes, that was incredible. The commitment to the bit is legendary. On efficiency and effectiveness, however.
Oh boy, I lost that.
On efficiency and effectiveness, I think Smug more succinctly delivered the talker in a way that was well connected to the question.
Sure.
And so those two things are
They're in conflict.
They're in conflict.
Yeah.
I mean, as a showman, I want to say Holmes won. But I think ultimately my brain's going to win over my heart here. Smug, you're our winner.
Okay.
And I'll say
take
another
it.
thing. The job is tough because, like, I agreed with everything he said. It's like you're making some great points, dude.
Dude, the
Salient points.
Star-Spangled Bootstraps is the greatest writing.
That's a free book.
Did
Spaghetti, was that you?
Was
Did
that
you write that?
Was that Wolf?
That was Wolf.
Oh, thank you,
Wolf
Wolf.
wrote that?
That's like a free idea for any house member.
No,
like,
it was
that's
good.
a bestseller.
It was good, and I'm happy to write the foreword.
Yeah.
in such a book. That's fantastic. Oh,
What a
God.
great game.
Yeah,
Love
it's
it.
so good. All right, well, look, that's our game, and I got to tell you, fellas, I think we should play this almost every week.
It's terrific.
Yeah,
the
I
crowd loves
agree.
it.
Don't
It's
you
fun.
think?
I
We really
agree.
should. Do you guys want some variety?
Yes.
Always.
All right, so if we're going to get into some variety, the thoughts of the variety this week, I've sorted through a whole bunch of different stuff because I feel like we're just sort of like, we need some animal stuff, but we also can't escape other pieces of this. But here's where it kind of blends together.
Okay.
This is from the New York Post.
Okay.
Watch out for bizarre animal behavior during next month's total eclipse, scientists urge.
Oh, interesting.
So this is more of a public service than it is just a segment on variety. Next month's total solar eclipse is expected to confuse the heck out of animals and create some bizarre behavior. So scientists are staking out zoos and asking people to take notes of their pets for data. During the last total eclipse in the U.S. in 2017, flamingos encircled their babies to protect them. Giraffes galloped around their enclosure. Huge flocks of birds abandoned their flights to roost in the trees, and ancient Galapagos tortoises started mating, according to USA Today. Animals simply don't know what to do because of eclipses in the sky, and they're not something that they're biologically adapted for, said Andrew Farnsworth, a visiting scientist at Cornell.
Okay.
So,
So here's my question.
Okay.
Okay, assuming you don't have a Galapagos tortoise mating in your backyard, we need to be watching for things our animals might do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, is your betta fish jumping out of the bowl?
right.
Is your dog peeing on the kitchen floor when it usually goes outside?
Sure.
What are the things that you feel like we need to be watching for on a daily basis?
Well, I feel like part of the things that we've wondered about are bears gathering in packs to try to commit an armed robbery, for example.
Okay.
That is something that maybe the eclipse has something to do with, or maybe not, but it's something to keep an eye on.
I think Ashbrook's got a good point. It's like, what are we trying to observe here? And I think that's the problem, is because you look across, everyone knows somebody who's got a dog, and you hate hanging out with them because, number one, either they bring their shitty dog everywhere, or if you go to their place to hang out, the shitty dog is causing problems. So, like, number one, I'd say at this point, sadly,
Put
the
down the
majority of people let the dog, like, the dog is the pet owner and they are the pet, right? So it's like, well, how would you notice your dog is acting weird when it's already running the house? Like the majority of Americans, like, when they say fur babies, for example, that's not a baby, that's a damn animal. It's, it's a domesticated wolf. It should be outside in the first place. But you have some kind of like a mental problem to replace a child.
So you're
with this
saying
thing.
if you're looking out for your neighbors ahead of this eclipse, put your pet down before the eclipse.
Well, I mean, so that's another aspect of it, is like everyone else has to deal with people's shitty pets, right? Like either
You're not advocating for taking the pet to the vet and putting it down.
The long needle.
I mean, if need be,
draining your
absolutely.
fish tank and just
I
letting
think
the
there's
fish
probably
flop
a
until it's
significant
done.
number of these dogs who are running amok that could deal with the long needle. Like,
Well, each and every animal reacts differently. For example, the people at the Fort Worth Zoo are studying this behavior in bonobo apes. Quote, they're very sexual animals,
Oh my God.
this gentleman said. When they get stressed out, the reaction is to have sex. I'm very curious to see if they react by mating.
okay, so this
This
guy's a
fella
weirdo.
says.
First off, he's like, I'm very interested to see this go down.
Man, I'm glad I don't work
So, like, this is why I don't trust experts, scientists. These are weirdos to begin with.
Can you imagine? You're like, hey guys, big night tonight. There's a solar eclipse. I'm gonna watch the apes bang.
Yeah.
all night long.
Not a normal fucking thing to do.
What a terrible job.
So weird. So weird to begin
Mike
with.
Rowe really missed the boat at not going down there to cover these guys for that job.
But also, honestly, like, shout out to the, like, turtles and monkeys who are like, the world could be ending. Let's do it.
We got to get this
This
thing
is the
on.
last shot.
Yeah.
The hell with it. I want to go out with a bang, like literally. So credit to them.
So anyway, keep your eyes open. It turns out this stuff is happening. I guess it's happening soon. It does. The upcoming total eclipse will pass over North America on April 8th.
Okay, that's
Monday,
right around the corner.
April 8th.
And this isn't medical advice, but I've looked directly at it, and it was cool.
One of my favorite things during the Trump administration, when they were like the White House and everybody else was like, whatever you do, just don't look directly at the sun. Like, don't do it. Like, don't look directly at the sun. And then they do this big thing at the White House where everybody comes out on the South Lawn, and Trump like immediately just looks directly at the sun.
And he can still see.
He can still see.
Yeah. Like, this is not medical advice. Don't listen to me. But they always want you to do some stupid shit, like get a piece of foil, punch a hole in it, look at a shadow. You're not seeing anything, man. Like, I'm not here for a puppet show. It's an eclipse. I look up at the eclipse.
No,
knock
do
on
not.
wood, I didn't lose my vision. It's not
Don't.
like an eclipse means lasers fly from the sun and cook your head, you know? In my opinion, I'm not a doctor, so you shouldn't listen to me. But I looked at it, and it was fine.
Do not look at it.
I looked at it, and it was fine.
It was a great time.
The official medical expertise of the Ruthless Variety Program. It's all good. Don't fucking worry about it. Just fucking drink a beer and hang out. Look at the sun.
So good.
All right, so with that, I think we're going to get into this interview because it is an extensive and a long one. Look, I think these are fascinating women. Obviously, you know MK by now if you've been a part of this program. But they have like an interesting experience to be told about conservative women in the media and what that's like. And obviously, Meghan with The View and all kinds of other things adds to that. And I think there's a lot of fascinating stuff, particularly for our moms in the audience who would just like love to hear what it is that these people have to endure on a day-to-day basis, which some of which is hard for all of us to comprehend, but amazing to hear from. So let's get to that interview. Well, we got an extra special day here on the Ruthless Variety Program. We have two incredible guests, good friends of the program, people we've known for a long time, and then one I think you see probably every 3 weeks. First of all, Meghan McCain.
Thank
you
you
so much. She's
thank you so much. And I love Mary Katherine. We've been friends a long time.
Yeah, and then Mary Katherine Ham, who needs no introduction on this. I mean, I think there was a while when Smug was doing his holidays, where she was basically like a guest host.
Yeah. The fear that she would replace him was the only way we could get him back in the
I
office.
know. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I put the fire under the ass. That's what I'm here for.
But we get the best ratings when you're on. And my wife is like, you should really have her on more often.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And it always helps to hold something over Smug.
Right.
So it's perfect.
And he's not here today.
And he's not here today.
Didn't want to show up for me. And
Can you
MK
believe that?
Here.
What an insult.
I mean, kind of douchey not to show up for me. I haven't been on before, so what are you good to show up?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I love his Twitter.
I know. I don't know what to say about that. But anyway, you've got a new thing going on.
Yes.
Citizen McCain.
Yeah, I mean, I have two things, like a psycho, and Mary Katherine's been on my podcast. I have a podcast called Meghan McCain Has Entered the Chat, which is a joke about, chats when people enter and not. And then I have a digital show called Citizen McCain. It's in its baby phases, and we're trying to make it work. So
That's awesome.
we're all just trying in new media because none of us want to work for corporate media anymore.
Yeah.
No one on this table wants to work.
Well, I
And you
think
can
that's
do your
right.
own thing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Well, you've certainly found that out.
I try.
Yeah.
You can do.
Yeah.
You do your own thing, don't you?
She does.
Like absolutely.
I mean, to some extent, I gotta not get completely canceled, right?
I feel like you
Canceled.
think about that a lot.
Cancel. You're on TV all the time.
I know. I'm saying I gotta prevent being canceled, right?
Yeah.
So I just
mean,
have to
are
talk about
people being
insane things,
canceled
but
now, though?
sound sane while I'm doing it.
It's
Can
a
you
skill.
still get canceled now, though? I mean, I was just
I
having
know, like it doesn't really matter.
Is it real
does it?
anymore?
If
Wasn't
they-
Shane Gillis hosting SNL Cancel Culture's funeral?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Like, I don't think you can get canceled the same way you could a few years ago.
Well, they invited
It is
us on CNN.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's really, I mean,
talk about a grave error. I'm
surprised they let you in the building.
I am too.
Sincerely, like I didn't know they really let Republicans in.
Well, and
so.
particularly Smug, who did an entire interview with his sunglasses on.
I love it.
They did not. They did
I
not.
bet they love that.
They were like, "Is he really going to do it?" I got a call this morning. They're like, "Is he really just he rolls
is.
with the sun?" And I was like, "Absolutely."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's
and
the way he rolls.
they kept asking him for his government name.
Yeah, he wouldn't say it.
No, just Smug.
Just call me
Put it on
Smug.
the Chiron.
They're trying to check him in at security, caused a whole issue. So, but to your point, if you can't cancel that, maybe you can't cancel stuff nowadays.
I just don't think it's the same anymore. I don't think people are quite as hysterical, and people are like, "Hey, I want to watch Dave Chappelle. Stop it.
Right.
I want to like at some point the free market comes into place. People listen to podcasts like this. Like, you don't want all your artists and commentators and whatever like being held to some bizarre standard none of us can adhere to.
Well, not only that, but like you can be edgy.
Oh, I'm so edgy. I know. Someone was like, "Since you had babies, have you calmed down?" I was like, "Not at all. I don't know what that means." And I'll have weird conversations with my kids when they get older and be like, "Well, a lot of people messed with mom and her family, and she fought back, and that's just how it was." So.
I feel like that's behavior you want to model to your children.
That's exactly
you.
right. You protect your family. You do your
Exactly.
thing.
Speaking up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Well, listen, we've always followed your career in
Thank
all
you.
of the
I've
different.
been on air with you before.
Yeah,
we were
we-
talking about it on Fox before.
We used to do what was it, like Outnumbered or something like that? You
Yeah.
hosted Outnumbered.
I did.
for
for a few years. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. I mean, it was many moons ago now.
It was a while ago. It was like before Trump was elected.
Right.
Or had just been elected or a while ago.
It was a while ago. And then you left that job. You went to The View,
Yes. Yes.
which honestly I'm very curious about because we have a running theory. Occasionally we'll play clips of The View.
Sure. It's so good. Some of the clips now are so good.
Well, like it blows our mind a little bit because we're like, how do you find these people? Like, how do you find these opinions? And I can't imagine how it would be to try to represent anything center right on a show like that without like feeling like a piñata every day.
Well, she's guest hosted too, so you know.
That's
So Mary
right.
Katherine, yeah. I actually thought she would replace me. Like, I gave them a list of like 5 people that I was like, these are the people you should hire, and you were on it. A lot. Liz Wheeler and Mary Katherine and my friend Ussie Cup were like the main people. I was like, these would be strong, tough women that can do it. And of course, they didn't hire any of them because you don't want a strong, tough
they're
woman.
Like strong and tough.
Yes. We don't need any real conservatives here.
They're like, Meghan, you know us better than that.
You did the Lord's work on that show.
Thanks.
That's a heavy job.
You've done it.
I know, but I didn't have to do it every single day. Like I was prepared for battle on this one day, right? And it's that's a grind because it is. And you've done this at CNN or other places before, where you have to take the entire premise of what you're talking about and sort of like, oh, we're going to turn this ship. We're going to keep turning it. And I'm going to make a sane point over here.
With his smile.
But like, that's really hard to do. It's hard to do.
Yeah,
And they're like, you're racist and evil. Shut up. That was always the answer.
Let's reframe that.
which is tough, right? But you did it day in and day out. And
4 years, yeah.
in incredibly politically
I'm
divisive.
the longest host other than Elizabeth Hasselbeck, and Elizabeth Hasselbeck did it a long time ago and like is not that public about her experience in the same way. And I'm like, it's awful, don't do it. Like,
Was it just demoralizing, you know?
You know, the hard part is they're like, and you know this, like the entire show are leftists. And I'm talking about like hair,
Producers.
makeup, producers. Like, so when you go in, they're like, that alien right there. So it's hard to even explain your perspective because everyone is already automatically coming in being like, you're the enemy. And at least for me, maybe it is different if you're someone who wants to like placate the show and be popular and be loved. I've never cared about being loved, for better or worse. And look, it's a great platform. It was like amazing at the time. I got to ask like liberal people on the show uncomfortable questions I never would have had the
So
opportunity
glorious.
before. Yeah, that's the fun part. But I had a really horrible experience. I had a particularly horrible experience when, after I had my first daughter, I've been very open and public about how I was treated coming back in COVID, in maternity leave, which is shouldn't be allowed with any woman anywhere. And it's ironic that like an all-female show is like, you know, treated someone who just had a baby that way. So that's ultimately why I left. It wasn't political. It was actually like, I just wanted to have more children and didn't think I could actually like mentally, physically, and emotionally have more children working on that show.
Yeah. So, I mean.
And then she was like, MK, I'm putting you on the list.
And I was like, but you're next.
Like, nobody.
You just got to put you. Yeah, we got to bequeath it.
I wouldn't wish this on my worst nightmare. MK, are you interested?
I still think she would have been good, but I also. You're right though. Like the personal part of it, you don't want to subject.
No.
It.
I appreciate you thinking of me that way because I like to take it to people in a situation like that,
Yeah.
and I think I can do it and have done it in a way that is not horribly alienating. But there's a price to pay for doing that battle every day, and you
You
paid
did it with Bill O'Reilly.
It's not easy.
You were always that was how you like got your stripes, is like debating Bill O'Reilly once a week. That's how she
Turns
got
out
it.
that's
gosh,
good
I
training.
Yeah.
totally forgot that.
Yeah.
That was
Like
I was
once
just
a week,
baby.
right?
What in the
Yeah,
world
you were like
were you
20
thinking?
or something.
That's fantastic.
Oh no, I wasn't thinking. That's the key. I was 26 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Amazing.
I don't care what this dude says to me. And I didn't know. I wasn't smart enough to kiss his ass.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just did the thing, and it turned out that was good TV.
And they like that.
It's very good
Doing
TV.
the thing. Well, I mean,
I
listen,
used to love watching those segments.
They were
did.
fun.
Like she actually fought with him. If you ever want to go in the bowels of YouTube, I'm sure it's all over the place. But
Explaining the internet to him, that was a whole thing. You'd enjoy those.
Yeah, I have to do that all the time around here.
he fixes our email and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
That's
yeah.
like-
When the Wi-Fi's out, they have me reset
Yeah,
the
it's
router.
like, hey, dude, Duncan, can we
Yeah.
get that back up?
Yeah,
That'd be
sure.
great. Lights aren't working either. So, all right. So, like, are they really as bad as they appear? Like, off camera?
yes,
They are?
Yes.
So this is like an authentic
and they
thing.
hate you. They
That-
hate you, and I mean literally you. Like I mean like
Oh, yeah, for-
conservatives, men.
Yeah.
Me, you, like
Men.
You know, I will say I was
love it,
there.
Just like an entire gender.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I don't want to sound like, you know, people are always like, you talk about it all the time. I'm asked about it all the time.
Yeah, I'm
and
asking. Yeah.
they're in the press all the time for doing insane things. And the thing that makes me so sad is I actually had guest hosted The View like a lot in the beginning parts of my career, and I had been approached to be a host like twice before, and I didn't want to do it. It didn't pan out, whatever. So when I finally did it, I did it in the spirit of like, okay, they really feel like they need a change because Trump just won and they realize they're not talking about this segment of the country and conservatives need a voice and they need to be represented. And that was the whole point of why they hired me.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I was punished for being realistic about things, particularly during COVID when I was like, these lockdowns are hurting kids.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions about, you know, the draconian lockdowns. And it was like, oh my God, you're an anti-vaxxer. Blah, blah, blah. So,
Well, and then just this week, they double, triple, quadrupled down on school closures with Dr. Phil on the show.
I didn't see that.
To which it's mind blowing. I mean, that is a viewpoint that has been. He's just like they were the least at risk group, and we put them in a lot of harm's way because we shut down schools and because we shut down support systems. And they're like, wait a second, doctor, are you saying no children died?
Yeah.
I have thoughts.
But this is what I'm talking about specifically is like in order to be sometimes I am confused of whether they're characters or not. Accordingly, they're not. This is actually who
that's
these
who
people
they
are.
are. Yeah.
But like you wonder when you see people like that, like what does their silo of information look like? Like how do you surround yourself with such a bubble that things like, 4 years after the fact, you're like, no, that was a good idea.
I remember being in a meeting and telling just the room, some of you have got to interact with someone who makes less than $100,000 a year.
Yeah,
Just like you just have to have a conversation with someone who doesn't have like a house in the Hamptons.
I feel like you got to set that income a little higher for them. Like we got to be realistic.
What do they say to that?
Then I mean that's part of the reason why I had no friends there.
It's just wild to me that when the cameras go off, the lunacy does not stop.
For me, look, I am told that it's all just like, utopian, beautiful. They all get along. There's never any problems. I was the drama. I was the problem. The whole thing. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But for me, like, I don't want to be friends with people that I don't respect. It's too hard. And there was a period of time where I was like, we should like go along to get along. And then I was like, I just think this is not in the spirit of why this show was created. Barbara Walters, who I knew, like created it because she wanted different ages, which by the way, there's not different ages on that show anymore.
No, it's all the same.
It's just all, women I think over 60 or at 60. And again, ageist. It's just like it was designed to be of different backgrounds, different politics. And
Variety.
conservatives are 50% of the country.
Right.
So what, and from like an economic perspective, and this is like a broad question for all of media, like if you know you're missing 50% of an audience, don't you want the money and the advertising and the eyes and the ratings? And I think this about like late night TV,
Yes.
cable news, no disrespect to your best friends at CNN, like just all. But like, don't you want to reach out to, I don't understand that part. I just really don't understand.
You think from a
Particularly funny, though, that it's called The View, and there's really only one view.
Yeah, it is a singular.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
singular.
That being said, though, I'm not happy about Trump anything, as everybody knows. But if he wins, turn on The View the next day.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic.
Turn it on live, watch it live, all of you, because that's one time I might tune back in.
So, but let me ask you this, because I think you guys have an interesting perspective of being women conservatives in the media.
Uh-huh.
And in many respects, it's the hardest possible thing you could be, right? Because like,
Thank you.
so, but
I won't argue with that at all.
but like outside of Fox,
Yeah.
you're basically treated like a zoo animal, right?
We're treated like gender heretics, like that you have like abandoned and like you're traitors to women, especially being pro-life.
Because it is that, right? I mean, it's from the outside looking in. I look at it, and that's my view. But I mean, you live this, and that's what it appears to be.
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up with all liberals, so I just
Oh, so
sort
you're
of
just
am
like-
this.
Yeah,
Like, oh, they always.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a college town. So, it's in the South, so it's surrounded by other sane people, but I was in a liberal college town, and that whole town is like, she seems so nice growing up. And this is what I became. But they turned me into this, right? Like what I had was exposure to a community that all agreed about everything.
Right.
And I was a person who just wanted to go, but why? But why do we think that? And why do we all agree? And why is it bothering you so much that I'm asking? And so that became sort of how I went through life. So then you get to college and you ask the same questions, and then you end up on TV and you ask the same questions, and people the whole time look at you like you have a third eyeball, and you get very comfortable with that.
But don't you find it incredibly amazing that, I mean, look, in popular culture, and this is changing a little bit, I guess, over time because different sources of information or whatnot, but I think about sort of how media in general treats women in general. And it treats an entire gender as if it's entirely monolithic.
Totally.
And like I look at women's magazines. Like my wife's super into fashion. She's got all these magazines. And I'll periodically just pick one up and kind of sort of, and it's like, oh, look at this great thing that AOC is.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like 5 blurbs on an interview with AOC. And I'm like, that's the craziest person in all of Washington, D.C. It would be like if you just had a random men's health magazine that's like, oh, here's Louis Gohmert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we'd never see that.
Yeah.
But it
Health
happens.
front, I'm there for it.
But it happens regularly with women where they like normalize not just like left of center Democratic politics, but like radical progressivism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real problem. I mean, I think women's magazines in particular, which is also another medium that's really dying right now, it is not reflective. I agree with you. You've got to go through, like, whenever they do, like, most powerful women X, Y, and Z, or, like, most powerful women in D.C., for a while, I think Mary Katherine and I went back and forth of being, like, the token one they would maybe choose. But then when you see the layout, evereverone has, like, a photo spread, and you get, like, a little box where it's, like, you're tiny.
They like take something off your Instagram stories and put it in there.
But it's interesting, and I think it's actually, I have a theory, it's why so many of the younger Zers are turning towards conservatism in a totally different way, because they're like, but I don't want to be like AOC. I don't think, like, first of all, just like superficially, she's just not, she's like kind of hysterical and like very precious and always like crying and like everything's the end of the world, and like women are strong and tough, and like it's okay to have strong tough role models that aren't always like crying on the congressional floor and like in news. And I think that it's actually been like they're all just shooting themselves in the foot. The same way I was talking about like with ratings. I think that it's actually having the reverse effect. And there's a lot of young people who are turning more towards our side, I think because of cancel culture, because of the economy, because of just everything. Like young people are like, I don't know, I find it really fascinating that so many younger people are having kids earlier and really rejecting the like notion that we had when we were growing up that like having kids was going to like end your life, like the Sex and the City culture that was really shoved down our
interesting.
throats.
Yeah, I think there's a normie mom demographic that in media, in politics is up for grabs in some ways. And yes, like I would say, you look at suburban moms, they lean left. Well, one of the reasons they lean left is because the GOP in some respects has sort of chased them that direction over the past 8 to 10 years, right? I have a lot of friends in that demographic.
Just wait till we ban IVF. That's going to be terrific.
I don't think that will go well.
I mean, it's the conversation, so we can get into that later.
But to that point, like there is a demo that is not super represented that doesn't believe super outrageous things, right? And is just trying to raise their kids and enjoy their lives.
Yes.
And I think you saw that movement a little bit in Virginia post-COVID after all the school closures when the Normie Mom demo got very active about the fact that you shut down their kids' schools for a year and a half. And people wanted to turn it into this very radical thing. But in fact, it was like, can you please put my children back in school, the thing I pay for?
We had a basic agreement, I thought.
Tax dollars? Right. So that demo is out there, and it's powerful.
Well, you're seeing it. I mean, look, you both have successful podcasts. And I assume that a lot of your demo, we're dealing with that, what you're talking about. Like normal moms who just want sort of content, get up to date on whatever is happening, but they're not like interested in some sort of left-wing view of the world, right? I mean, it seems to be like you're right.
We wouldn't have careers if that were the case.
Right.
Like I wouldn't be sitting here with you. Like respectfully, and again, I really like give it up to people who still support us, and I mean like partners I'm people I've partnered with, like my agent. Like there are demographics for us. The media just wants to pretend they don't exist.
Yeah.
And I think it's also why so many Democrats are like shocked that so many Hispanic people are now coming to the Republican Party. Right. So many women. I actually think like the suburban woman myth. I think it's anti-Trump. I actually don't think it's left. Right. I think they hate Trump and like can't get over all the things that like I have problems getting over.
It's like a personality issue more than an ideological one.
Well, you can see it with the Youngkin vote, right?
Yeah.
That is a candidate who talks to that demographic extremely well.
I love him.
Yeah.
And I love his assistant too. The second one.
Oh, Winsome Sears.
Winsome Sears. I love her.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I really do.
She's great.
Tough.
She's been on the show.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
She's a tough lady.
I love it. I'm like, more of this. Like, please. I hope she becomes my governor. Anyway.
So I mean, look, you guys are public people, and you balance careers
you guys.
with like this is about you, not us. Okay. We like to talk about us, but in this
your
15
job,
minutes,
I think, is the toughest one in media.
You know what? I'm glad you've said that. And it's about time people appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
But like balancing home, right? You got kids. Mm-hmm. You have like 100 of them.
I do. I have 100.
100
You do
children.
have a lot. You have 4.
Yeah. I have 4 kids.
Yes.
But like, talk to us a little bit about the balance there, because I mean, a lot of our listeners, young families, right? And I think that's interesting from people who have a serious career footprint in a lot of different ways and how you balance it.
By the way, can I see the feminist answer would be like, how dare you ask me that question? Because no man has ever asked that question.
But I ask men that question. I do ask men that question.
Well, they talk about it, actually.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about Ruthless is that you guys actually do talk about that, and then you wish ill uncomfortably Smug for when he has children and has to balance all of these things.
It's such a great day.
We do.
He doesn't have kids?
No.
Oh, he's going to be in it.
Yeah.
When he does.
Oh, my God.
We can't wait.
And we'll be
I
there
can't wait too.
Because he complains a lot about kids in airports.
Oh,
and
come
so,
on.
No, it's
And in
ridiculous.
restaurants.
It's ridiculous.
Every situation.
But we are going to hire a film crew. Yeah. The first time he has to travel with his family.
My God.
It's
Full
gonna
boom
be
mics.
Oh, my God.
incredible.
You're gonna lose
It's
his
the
mind.
worst. At airports with kids is like, that'll like... I mean, that is like one of the most demanding things I've ever done in my life. It's awful.
It's terrible, but you should see, there's nobody that does it quite like Duncan.
Well, please tell me your ways, because I find it so
No.
hard.
What? It's funny.
So unbeknownst to us,
bribe
we were
them?
traveling at the same time in 2 different directions, and my wife and I and our kids are sitting at the gate, and I look over across the way, and down the hallway comes something that can only be described as like an 1890s flying machine. Like, the ones with the hoppers?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
What was
Well,
it?
let me just say, because I'm sure someone will send this clip to my wife. I love you, honey, but you're an overpacker.
Me too. It's okay.
And yeah, I mean, we have the double stroller that sort of comes apart, and then, there's the car seat that also functions as like a
FAA compliant, seat
It looks
for the
like
airplane.
he's putting together a Voltron or something when he's trying to get
This is actually
this
the
thing.
key. It's fine to have all that stuff, but you got to Optimus Prime when you
You
get
do.
in the security line.
You do, and you learn all sorts of
exactly what I'm
tricks,
talking about.
all sorts of tricks, and like how to like get it all apart very quickly, and like I don't know, being a parent is about being. It's like a master's degree in supply chain management.
Yeah. That's so true.
And you really earn your doctorate when you have to travel in an airport.
Airport,
But my friends, being good friends, don't compliment me on my abilities.
No.
They just troll me.
No, I'm more interested in taking pictures and sending it to the group.
Well, because like once the hardest part is once you get through security and then like you're stressed, you're sweaty. The 4-year-old wanted to play with the conveyor belt thing, and so now he's having a meltdown because he's having a lot of fun helping everyone else with their bags, and he doesn't want to take his bag. And so you get there to the gate, and here's my
And
buddy.
then I'm standing there with a camera.
Yeah, basically, that's it. Yeah.
This is the difference. This is the difference between men and women. Meghan, you're doing a great job balancing
thank
everything.
you.
I love to watch it. It's very empowering.
And then as soon as you leave, she's like, she's terrible.
We are women supporting women.
She would not say that. We're going over to our friend's house soon to see their new baby, his new baby. So
No, but is it like, look, is it a thing? Or people make too big of a thing of it? Or you like find that this is just life and this is how you deal with it?
So I don't always love everything Michelle Obama says, but I think one thing she said that always resonates with me is women can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And that has really been for me like something that has rang true. And I think it's just like everyone is doing the best they can. Like a week ago, my daughter had food poisoning or stomach bug, I don't know which, and every half hour was puking on me and my husband every half hour, like puking, and then we were like in and out of the shower, and then like changing the sheets. It's awful. And Ben goes, "I'll never complain about how many sheets you buy again," because that's been like a thing. Because I like buying linens,
Yeah.
and he's like, "I take back anything I ever said." I was like, "Just keep putting it in the wash, whatever." And it's just
Keep
like
it rolling.
I have vomit all over myself, and I was like, "Remember when we first met and we went to like Monkey Bar, and I was wearing like a hot dress?" And like whatever. Do you ever think our life would be like this, like vomit and showers? So like, there's stuff about parenting that like it will just put you to your knees.
Totally.
And always like that. And it's like, but it's also like the best. I wish someone had told me when I was like 30 that all that stuff is also it's also like the best thing ever. Like waking up every morning with my like daughters and they like cooking breakfast, whatever. It's like the simplicity. And when my dad died, I had like very serious grief, very hard times, like grief counseling, like the whole thing. And I wish someone would have told me, you're going to find that love again. It's just going to be with your kids.
Yeah.
Like
That's
that pure love.
Yep.
But you have to wait. And so my problem with like people on the left and like, you see Joy Reid talking about how no one should have kids again?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's just, that's what I'm talking about. It's this kind of stuff. It's why I asked you about The View.
That's why I foiled her with my 4 children.
Read on MSNBC. It's like wild.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's horrible. Like, and I actually remember a conversation backstage at The View where someone was fighting with someone else about you can't have kids because of climate change. And I remember being like, I have to get the fuck out of here. Like, I have to get out of here. Like, and that it's irresponsible to have children because of climate change. That's a real conversation that happened.
By the way,
fight,
if they want a tax base for their wild subsidies and insane ideas, they need us to have children.
Right.
So,
Or just open the border entirely.
You're welcome.
Right? I mean, they can figure that out too. It
Also,
might
what
be
about
their-
your private jets and your houses in the Hamptons? Like, what's that carbon footprint? Doesn't
Doesn't matter.
Can you fly commercial? Like, not everybody on that show flies commercial. Like,
look, I fly private for the right reasons. Okay.
just the most when everyone's talking about carbon footprints, I'm like, what about your private car and driver? Like, what's your anyway?
Yeah.
No, they're worried
no.
about my toddler.
That's a security issue.
I just enjoy my children so much. I think they're funny, they're fun, they're silly, they're ridiculous. One of them's learning to talk right now, and she says ridiculous things that we have to sort of decipher and translate, and it's a good time.
I also found that they give me a very different perspective, right? And I think back on an awful lot of the things that I was just sort of like omni-focused on before kids. And then I think back and think how like trivial and little all of those things are after you have kids, right? I mean, it shapes your whole personality in a different way where you're like little shit doesn't really matter
So
all
true.
that much, right?
So true.
Well, and to your point, Meghan, like my children, I think it could be said, literally saved me from what would have been a terrible turn of grief, right?
Yeah.
So my late husband passed away. I was pregnant with my second. I couldn't get in a bottle. I couldn't go down a bad path because I was pregnant with my second child.
Yeah.
And then when
Quite
she was
literally
born,
saved you.
I just had to take care of her. And every morning I had to be up with my toddler, and it does a lot for your mental health to just have to get out of bed and serve the needs of someone else instead of being constantly in your own
stuff. That is
stuff.
such a good point. I mean, I think that's 100% true, is like it has a way of centering you, and things that used to bother me before I had kids just
I mean, the list is
bother me.
still long.
It's very long.
Don't let him
But I
fool
just
you.
care a lot less about it. You know, you care less about what other people think of you.
So true.
You know, because it's like the only thing that matters is like what my wife and kids think of me.
Totally.
You know?
And like conversely, the things that I am worried about in the world become much huger.
Oh, yeah.
Like become much scarier. Like I remember like 2 days before I gave birth, I was like, there are people that are addicted to watching porn, Ben. And like that's so scary. And porn's like a real problem. We're gonna have to address it. And he was like, stop. like you can't. Like we have some years before.
Pause
and I was
for
like,
now.
the internet and screen time, what am I gonna do? But it's like stuff like that. You're like, oh my God. Like I looked up, have you ever looked up how many sex offenders in your neighborhood? Do not
No, don't
do
I
that.
can't.
I have done that.
Do not do that.
I have done that.
And I was like, we have to fucking move. I can't. It's like, that's the kind of thing that before I'm like, whatever, I'm fine. Like, and now I'm like, there's sex offenders.
Honey, there's a nice place in Guam. There's a nice place in Guam.
Exactly.
Do you ever find yourself taking a different path on a stroll when you're walking the dog? Maybe check in on the house, see what's going on out there, you know? I mean,
Like,
you know.
I don't think I get this reference. Like what?
Well, the sex offenders in the neighborhood.
I mean, not exactly, but there's one street that I would rather not.
Yeah, just
But
don't go.
I mean, I don't want to get into this, but it's like, don't do that. I'm just my advice to everyone's like, don't look up sex offenders.
Well, I mean, that's the whole problem is like we have so much information.
Yeah.
I know. So I think this dovetails with the normie mom demo question and how you serve that demographic.
Yeah.
Because what I attempt to do and what I get from Megan's podcast too is that we're not freaking out all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's useful to freak out all the time, which is a thing I used to say when I was on CNN during the Trump years.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you have to tell people what is an important story and what's a slightly less important story. And sometimes I would just be like, guys, I think this is like a 6.
Like it
I don't
can't-
know,
yeah,
like
it can't be
I'm not sure.
11
It
every-
can't be
By the way,
11 all the
her
time.
working at CNN is comparable to me at The View. I mean, I'm sure you have your worst
Oh yeah,
stories,
well
too.
we've talked through an awful lot
Sure,
of that.
okay.
Yeah, we've talked through an awful lot. And look,
By the way, who had a prop bet on Tubin making it back on air before me?
Can you believe that? Can I tell you a quick story?
I wish I had bet on
On my new show, I was talking to a group of people who are LA based. They don't know who Jeffrey Tubin is, and they don't know who CNN. They know what CNN is, but they don't watch it.
Right.
And I told the story about Jeffrey Tubin. They were like, "That did not happen." I was like, "Not only did it happen, he was allowed back on camera, on air with women."
but in the
that
worst,
he works
in the
with.
worst possible way, though. Like where his first interview
That
had to
interview.
describe in detail
also-
what it is that he did.
What woman would do that
that.
interview?
That interview
Like,
itself was
disgusting.
sexual harassment.
Yes.
The
Can you
interview,
imagine
being
Allison?
asked to do the interview is sexual harassment.
Can you imagine Allison Camerata? For our audience who didn't know this, and we've talked about it once before, Allison Camerata at CNN had to interview Jeffrey Tubin's return to the set. But in doing so, CNN thought that they would disclose to
It was
their viewers.
newsy, you know? It
Yeah.
was newsy.
They would
They had to
disclose.
go through it.
They would disclose why it is that this all happened, and so she ended up having to do at least the first 5 minutes of this interview with Jeffrey describing in some detail what it was that he was up to,
Yeah.
and why it is that he got thrown off
Do
the
people
air.
know that he was masturbating on a Zoom and that's how he was?
Yeah.
I mean, not.
This audience knows.
Well, yeah.
But can you believe he's back on? And what is so interesting about his commentary that someone who, again, the only thing you're ever going to be known for, I don't care, People versus OJ, whatever, you masturbated on a Zoom. That's what everybody knows about you. You're a pervert. And to put the women that you work with in the position where I would have to be in a room with him, like, I find it, like, anything people say at CNN about Republicans, like, Fox isn't putting masturbating people on air right now. There are rules, and, like, people, I don't understand. Why would you let someone like that back on?
Well, this is why I'm
Sorry
not.
to, like,
this is why I'm not on air because like
put
I was
that on you,
I was
MK,
watching
it's not
him
your-
go back on air and I was like, how is someone not on set being like, I need your hands on the table, buddy.
Yeah.
Hands where I can see them.
But why would they let him back? I'm genuinely confused about it.
If I was running things, I would say you can come back on one condition, and it's the Chiron reads in-house masturbating. Right? So everybody's got like a lead senior political analyst, like a global domestic affairs analyst, in-house masturbate.
And on his
I think
part,
that would do the trick.
Why do you want to be on TV? Because we're joking about you right now
write
on the
your
Ruthless
books.
Podcast. Like, why do you want to be public? Every time you're on TV, it's all over my Twitter that this Zoom pervert is on TV again.
I don't think you'd see me.
Like, what? Oh my God!
So many people are rehabbed in this town where you're like,
yeah, it's so true.
But we need this voice so badly.
I know.
That we had to bring you like that. The Jeffrey Toobin voice was what was missing from
needed,
the convo.
We needed generic lefty legal advice.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, there's no. We have to have.
Not like, I don't know, like a suburban mom who feels a little alienated from the GOP and votes maybe a little more swingy than she used to. Like, what? We don't care about her.
You're like, how dare you? How dare you? So, all right. So
it's just insane.
Before we get out of here, though, I want to hear a little bit about these projects.
You're like more about the View.
No. Well, listen, I've got all day if you're going to do that. But I want to hear about these projects and, like, you know, I know what she's working on. We've talked a lot about.
She has a podcast too.
Getting Hammered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the best podcast name ever.
Yeah, our people. It is.
It really is.
And our people love it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that ham was a blessing when I was born with it, but here we are.
Yeah.
I love Getting Hammered. It's really good.
It is. So let's talk about.
I started a podcast like every other jerk on the planet, but I was very reluctant to start one because it is a saturated market, as we were talking about offline. But my partners were like, "You really can try it," and whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I just was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. And it's been doing really well. I'm really happy with it. It's called Meghan McCain's Entered the Chat. And I just really have my friends on and like shoot the shit. And it's really fun. You guys are invited, but you're very serious and important. And your podcast is much better than mine.
Are you kidding me?
Come on anytime.
Serious and important. There's nobody that's ever said that before.
Yeah.
Well,
You're
you guys
flattering.
have a successful fan base too. I mean, what's your advice to like people like me starting? Because you guys are what, 4 years in?
I mean, I wish I could tell you we were super smart. We're not. Like we saw a hole in the marketplace on conservative discussion where everybody was like, as we said in our promo for the show, like everybody reads you the Federalist Papers or tells you like how angry you should be about everything. And like none of that shit appeals to me and it doesn't appeal to these guys.
Yeah.
And certainly not Smug. And like we like to laugh. We like to
Yeah.
have a good time.
Me too.
You know?
Yeah.
And
That would be my one piece of advice is just do whatever comes naturally.
Yeah.
Because then it's easy to do every episode. And if it feels like a pain, you're never going to want to do it.
So true.
Because those conversations they're not the best if they're forced, you know? And the fact that like we just like get to hang out how we would normally hang out and press record instead of, I don't know, being at a bar or something, like that's what keeps us doing it.
Can I ask you all a question? Do you mind?
Sure.
I know your background before, obviously, hosting this podcast. Do you have an election or a person that you particularly loved working for, like a candidate? You can't say my dad, that doesn't count.
You're going to get bread buttered on that.
Yeah.
But, like, you've worked with so many interesting people.
Look, mine's obvious, and we've talked a lot about it.
Oh, well, duh. I mean,
but I think like
present
all of
person.
us have been around very interesting folks.
Yeah.
So like outside of the McConnell orbit, I think that what happens in conservative media is you become so focused on the person who says the craziest shit.
Totally.
Right? And you lose focus of very interesting people who got into it for an interesting reason that are actually doing the work. And one of the things that we've been able to do with this program is bring some of those people on and see that they got personality, right? And they've got families they want to talk about, and they've got reasons for why they see the world the same way. And it's like that part of it you never really get through cable or you get through the print media or anything else because nobody takes the time to do that. And I think there's just an enormous number of people. Like, I think you're outside looking in, you would say, if you didn't do this for a living, you would look at, like, Congress. And you'd be like, what a fucking mess.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, okay, it's a mess. Why is it a mess? I don't know. Let's hear from AOC and Matt Gaetz about what they think about it. And it's like, oh my God. You know?
Yeah.
But, like, there are serious people who are doing stuff. And we've had the benefit of not only working on the pre-podcast days for a lot of them, but now having them on, which is, I think, a very cool thing that you guys get to do too, is like you're interested in somebody, but nobody knows who they are, and you're like, I don't know, let's see what they're like.
Well, so a story sort of related to that, like one that comes to mind
is, do you remember when we were working on Todd Young's campaign in 2016? And after his debate, and, Senator Young's a very serious guy. This guy's, Marine. And, we go through the whole debate and everything, and then he killed it, crushed the thing. And we're at the bar afterwards, just sort of decompressing and like high-fiving and everything. And All Apologies comes on by Nirvana. And he starts like really getting into it. and I just, it's a moment I don't forget, because it's like, you work in this business long enough and you get used to like an older generation of people, running in the United States Senate. And it just, I always remember that moment, because it's like, wow, this guy's like a real Gen Xer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Easily amused.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So funny.
that's like a little thing where it's like you see like personality of people that you otherwise wouldn't if you didn't get a peek behind the curtain.
Well, I think people are interesting, and politics should be about people, and yet news media and politics more and more becomes just about stating what you already believe.
It's the worst.
Zero curiosity. I thought there's a lot to say about the Libs of TikTok and Taylor Lorenz confab.
Yeah.
But what struck me about it is the most dishonest thing that Taylor Lorenz said, and she said it over and over again, was, "I'm curious."
I know.
Yeah, she's not
and
curious.
then she would just state what she already believes.
I'm not doing an interview with someone in a mask. I would have sat down and been like, nope, I'm not doing it. For like a lot of different reasons, not doing it. Outside with a mask in 2024, absolutely not.
Sending me the bad signals, bad vibes.
Yeah.
An N95, like, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
man.
I mean,
like,
look,
Wild.
I know. Come on, man.
Wild.
and they think we're the crazy ones.
Yeah.
Right?
We're
That's
not.
the wild part.
That is the wild part.
But I'm sure all of you, myself included, I'm sure you've been to like, whatever, New York, LA, whatever, at a certain point, and there's always that one liberal in the hotel, in the bar, and whatever that comes up to you, and it's like, dude, I can't be open about it, but I totally agree with you, and
Yes.
I feel so repressed, and I'm gonna go crazy, and these people are crazy. There are more of us among you. Like, we're among you. Let me tell you. Like, the last time I went to LA, I was like, there's conservatives all over this place.
Right?
Like, all over this city, at the Sunset Marquis Hotel. Like, they're everywhere, and I just
We've got
feel
like a
they're
4-block area around this studio right here where every bartender in every one of the places, they're like, hey, man, what's going on? Like, don't tell us people at the end of the bar, but I love that stuff. I love it.
Well, and despite the GOP's best efforts, the left is like determined to radicalize more.
Yeah.
And like the immigration issue, for instance, I'm like, yo, I used to be a moderate on this.
Yeah.
I used to be a moderate.
No, it's true.
And what have you turned me into?
And the post, and I want to bring this up with you because I think the post that you had about the University of Georgia situation was amazing. And because you had sort of a real life experience, you're a reasonable human being. But like watching the way that everybody had processed that from a media standpoint was like unbelievable.
No, it is a parody come to life. And but it's not funny. It's actually insensitive and horrible.
Yeah.
To the people of the community, to the person who died, Laken Riley, who was 22, had a full life ahead of her. I ran on that trail every week of my college career. And so I do feel an emotional connection to it because from 22 to now, she doesn't get to live all those years that I had.
Yeah.
She doesn't get to have a career and family and friends. She was taken from her family. She doesn't have to have kids.
Yeah.
Taken from her friends. And then the idea that the mayor of town gets up and is like, well, I'm going to answer some of your concerns. And but what my concern is that the illegal immigrants in our community be safe from the rhetoric of other Americans.
I mean, it's just
like that's his concern.
I know.
It's wild.
That
It's
ain't
like
it, man.
It's like
That
when
ain't
people
it.
go on TV and there's like anti-Semitic hate crimes everywhere, and we're
Yeah.
talking about Islamophobia. Which
Yeah.
again, I don't want anyone to be bigoted towards Muslims or Islamic people either. But people are getting
Right.
crap beat
Eye
out
on
of them
the
on
ball.
college campuses
Eye on the
for
ball.
being Jewish. Like,
yeah.
okay.
Well, and I didn't
exact
know
same
that
thing.
Hamas actually had a foothold in democratic politics up
It's
until this point either,
It is
right?
crazy.
Isn't
It is
it?
wild. I can't believe, honestly, I cannot believe the level of anti-Semitism among the left at this point. It is so dangerous and crazy, and the whataboutisms and apologizing,
Yeah.
and I have been flabbergasted at the level, and that shit, sorry, I'm not
No,
that's
no,
right.
no,
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 pass
yeah, no.
away.
That's
encourage
on
it.
them. That's on them. They want to say what they want about us all day. Like, we have problems with like a few psychos in Charlottesville with tiki torches.
Yeah.
We're not in academia and Hollywood and college campuses and in every elite section of society in your entire squad, which apparently just hates Jewish Americans.
Yeah.
Very heated on this because I just cannot believe that the way Democrats and people on the left are letting this happen and apologize for it. And if Chuck Schumer continues to not do anything about the group of people in Congress that he's in charge of, I can't believe how much whataboutism they all do all the time. It's unbelievable.
It is such a good point because I think, look, during every possible, like you mentioned Charlottesville, for example. What happened in Charlottesville, terrible. Republicans spent the next 4 weeks discussing how they individually found it repugnant and condemned it.
Yes.
Democrats, when it comes to anti-Semitism, they're like, they just blow right through it. Nobody asks. But then...
Or endorse it.
But I was going to say, and then you see like a White House running for re-election that's like, okay, well, we can't piss them off too much. So we need to start engaging in like more, pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian stuff because
Can someone bring the anti-Semitic Instagram posts in? I need to review those.
Well, think of the analog to that.
I know.
Think of within somewhere in the Republican Party, people were like, yeah, but don't make fun of the white nationalists too much because we want to make sure the white nationalists turn out in November. I mean, that's words that have never been said in Republican politics. Yet that's what's happening.
Exactly.
That's what's happening.
I still can't believe that
on the Democrat side.
Those presidents, the college presidents. I mean, I think that's some of the most wild. I think it's like one of the craziest things I've ever seen in politics. A group of presidents of schools who are like, if you killed Jews on campus, I mean, it's complicated. I don't know. Yeah. And only 2 of them have been fired. And then Saturday Night Live's opening the next Saturday was making fun of Elise Stefanik.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening in this country right now? And that's why I get so like exhausted and angry with like late night comedy. And by the way, I used to work at Saturday Night Live in college, so like whatever
that's really?
a million years ago.
Amazing. Wow.
And like, I mean, it was like an intern assistant, so it wasn't like amazing. I was there when Ashley Simpson was lip syncing though.
Oh wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she like
quite a moment.
Witness to history.
Yeah, quite a moment backstage too with her. But I just think that like, why are they apologizing for everything? And I think that's also why there's so much anger and so many people that are like, humans in America are smart and they're using their eyes and their ears and they know they're being lied to and they know they're being gaslit and they know they're being spun and they're like, but maybe you just hate Jews, Harvard.
Yeah.
Maybe you just hate Jews.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, maybe it's that simple.
At some point, you just got to pull it all back and ask the simple question.
Well, and this is why I appreciate voices that go on CNN, you going on The View, because conformity is really, really bad.
Yeah, and information silos are
and it
terrible.
creates a situation where you're a college president and you're allegedly this very smart person and better than all the rest of us and should tell us how to live our lives. And then you go out there and you don't even know what you're saying is vile.
Yeah.
You don't even know because you've been
true.
surrounded with people who agree with you the entire time and think you are the bee's knees.
Man.
It's so important what you're saying because if you look at the major broadcast networks, if you look at major newspapers, you look at the major universities, all of them think and say the exact same things. Nobody asks a question. Nobody's allowed to ask a question. And you're right. Like they don't know how to respond to somebody who's actually thinking. And I really think, we've talked about this on the show a lot, but like at every one of these major broadcast networks, there's no reason why half of the network producers, editors, reporters shouldn't be Republicans. Half of the country's Republicans.
I agree.
So why does it all have to be people who live in New York and hate each other and like they look down on the rest of us?
And it's because
why does it all have to be that? Because that's not the way the rest of the country is.
To make it through the rich family to Ivy League to media pipeline,
careful
you gotta just
that's my background.
and you have emerged nonconformist.
Another word from the aristocrats. Just a moment.
But to make it through that pipeline, Meghan has gone a different direction, which is commendable. To make it through that pipeline, nobody sticks their neck out to have a different opinion, right?
I mean, because you get the living crap beat out of you if
Exactly.
you do, or you're fired, or you're
But
demoted,
you seem
or whatever.
to like it.
I do. I'm so contrarian. I'm like, bring it on.
You
Like,
seem to
what?
like it.
I love fighting. I mean, not like all the time, but I like debates and I like being challenged to a point that's respectful. But from what you're saying with like, you know, the all the liberals that are working in media and stuff, she's right. It's like it all filters into like Ivy Leagues and whatever, and there's only a small pool that people like really like breed from, I guess. But I don't know. I too, one of the things that keeps me up at night, not to circle back to kids, but like, where the hell are my kids going to go to college?
Yeah, that's right. Worry about it.
I can't. I mean, I went to Columbia. I went to Ivy League school. Absolutely not.
Right.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
Like what? So I can have them bred and like indoctrinated into like socialism and anti-Semitism? No, thank you. For $100,000 a year or whatever
the price tag on that is something.
Well, you were at Columbia. I was at Arizona State University.
Way better. I love ASU, even though they've got like a Palestine problem
thing going on there too.
Yeah.
I mean, even the state schools have succumbed as well to some degree, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about the mayor of Athens, Clark County in Georgia.
Yeah, right.
And there's a bunch of parents who are learning, oh my gosh, it was not a great place to spend my money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay for that.
Well, I selected my school by going to the list of the party school.
Was it Playboy's #1 party school? Because it was for a long time.
The year that I applied.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, "Oh, you interested in a journalism degree?" I was like, "Yes." That's it.
That's right.
Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, okay." Well, that's why I went. Didn't major in journalism. Just like barely got out of there alive.
I did the same, but for like tailgating and just like a decent
a decent football team.
Yeah, decent.
Where did you
It
guys
was
go to
decent when I was
Where did
there.
you two go to college?
Indiana.
Indiana. Okay.
Yeah.
I graduated from Miami, but I transferred to a couple different schools. I was on the same route as Holmes.
Where do you send your kids?
So my kids are getting a little older. Not that much older, but we're a little bit ahead of you guys. And you know, the older they've gotten, the more that they're in the world, my wife and I are just kind of like telling them, you know what, we like people who think differently than us because we're not afraid of people who have different opinions, because we know that we come to these views for very good reasons, and we know we're not afraid to like put you in a spot where people are gonna be telling you things because you're gonna be asking them questions. And if everybody around you is saying the exact same thing, you're going to be like, wait a minute, why isn't anybody thinking the contrary? We're naturally born contrarians. My kids are naturally born contrarians. Sure. And people like that in a society like ours, I feel like is a pretty good fit.
So you're like, Harvard it is.
No, definitely not. Somewhere in Virginia.
His oldest is real squared away. Like she's not going to get thrown off track.
Okay. I really am worried about this.
No.
I really like.
Well, you got some time.
I'm a cheapskate.
What if they get
they're
addicted?
all going to be welders. All 4 of them.
Listen, I got to get you guys out of here.
Thank you.
This has been incredible. I feel
Thank
like we
you
could
so much
talk
for
for like
having us.
multiple
Yes.
hours. Come back again soon.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Keep us updated on what everybody's working on. I know we'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Yeah.
I'll play Smug.
Smug's
Have
getting
a Bojangles
fired. And
biscuit.
Mary Catherine's
Some
coming in as
cheese.
the permanent because you can't show up when
Seriously,
I'm
we'll
here.
throw some sunglasses on you. It'll take the whole thing. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Meghan McCain, Mary Catherine Am.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
I mean, they were so good. I loved hearing what Meghan had to say about the view behind the scenes. Of course, MK has talked on the show before about what it was like at CNN behind the scenes. She gave us a little bit more of that. But I think the point you made before we went to the interview was really important, because I hear from my wife all the time, you need more girls on the show. You need a woman's point of view, because there are women conservatives around here too, and you guys are just bros. So I feel like we need to have girls on more often to be able to talk about the things that they talked about.
And everyone's always like, we always get such a great response whenever Hammer's on the show. She does awesome.
Totally. Everybody loves it. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed that. We loved having them in here. And subscribe to their podcast if you haven't already, because it's really entertaining stuff. We appreciated them coming on. I'm sure it won't be the last time. With all of that being said, for a good Tuesday Smug, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. Again, reminder to the minions, we will be live streaming during the State of the Union, so go to our YouTube and subscribe now. Search for Ruthless Podcast, hit that subscribe button. So, until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.